Yeah, but because you touched upon pharma and IT
Yeah,
sectors,
yeah.
you've been able to predict trends ahead of the curve, and you were
I know.
talking about banks and financials coming back
Right.
into the picture,
Sure.
and pharma and IT getting affected, and we're seeing all those cycles play
Sure.
out now. What do you think of the cycles going forward? But B, also, how do you identify these cycles at large?
Well, number one is we have to recognize their cycles because we all come out of financial background and we all grew up on Excel spreadsheets. And the easiest thing was to take a line and draw it for the next 5 years and 10
Yeah.
years, and it went straight. And nature is cyclical. There's nothing linear in the world. You have day and night, and you have a season, 4 seasons in the year. So everything that you observe, even our own life, we go through a life cycle.
Yeah.
And so companies have a life cycle, sectors have a life cycle, nations have a life cycle, our world has a life cycle. The way we were discussing before we started the show, the kind of souls coming into this world are
Yeah.
coming with different life cycles. So once you play according to the laws of nature, that there is a life cycle, and there are clearly life cycles of economies. And I learned very early from the great Mark Faber. He used to write about life cycles of emerging markets. Then there were also in economic theory, there's the Schumpeterian analysis of where they talked of disruptive trends.
Right.
Then I also observed post the 1970s Bretton Woods that how every decade you created a bubble once you broke the gold standard.
Yeah.
And you went away from financial assets in one decade to hard assets in another decade. So with all that sort of there at the back of the mind, you can almost see what's coming ahead, because in some sense, as I'm older, I can say this now, I didn't realize it then, you're kind of in sync with nature. And it's like when you know a person, you can predict that person's nature now.
Mm.
Same way with most other things, you almost have a predictive, intuitive sense about what lies ahead. Like you meet some people, you get a creepy feeling, right? You don't want to meet that
Yeah.
person. And with some people, like you feel like you've known each other forever. So there's some things that work. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
I guess
Uh,
some things that align with
yeah,
you
yeah, it
naturally
just
give you
aligned. Yeah,
energy.
it's like, and not that I'm saying I'm similar, but it's like asking Sachin, when you see the ball, how do you hit it? I mean, he sees the ball like a football, and we get bored on the same ball.
Yeah.
So I think it's a bit like that. It comes with both your own nature has to be there, and B, you got to just keep at it. Uh, like this Malcolm Gladwell had that lovely book, no? He said 10,000 hours of practice.
Yeah.
That's what differentiated the Sachin from the Kambli, who, when they were kids in school, there was a Vinod Kambli who was supposed to be more talented than Sachin. And then his life, he took in another direction, and Sachin stayed very disciplined and kept honing his craft. And, look where he reached.
Yeah.
So it applies to all of us in all the fields we operate in.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll dive into the spirituality
Sure,
aspect for
sure.
sure. But where do you see we are in the cycle?
Yeah.
With Trump on Twitter, he comes
Right.
up with some really disturbing stuff
Right.
sometimes, and it's really affecting how people across countries are thinking about decision making or
Yeah.
investments in
Yeah.
they wanted to if they want to invest in different setting up different ventures, etc. So there's truly globalization is at risk, right? And
Yeah.
globalization
Yeah.
as we knew it is at risk.
Yeah.
So how do you see this geopolitical tension affecting the region
So,
across?
again, great question. And you have to go back in history to realize what we saw in the last 100 years was an exception. The world didn't really have one superpower dictating the rules of the world forever.
Yeah.
And even the rules which came about were actually post the Second World War, where the sort of two big colonial powers, UK and France, were counterweight by the non colonial powers, which were then the US and Russia, to say, let's now set the rules of the world and draw up a kind of a map on the way we want to now rule the world and the way we want rules to operate. And you therefore saw how even the Security Council was created with the big powers then sitting there, and then they grudgingly took in Germany, Japan. India was given a chance to come in, but we, for whatever reason, said let the Asian seat go away to China and so on. But that's one part of it. Then they also designed the world the way the monetary system would work and so on. So it was all rules designed to play to the strength of the West. Now, with the falling of the Berlin Wall and the demise of the Soviet Union, effectively the US was left as the only power in the world. So the era that I've lived through, 1990 to today, just saw a complete explosion of US exceptionalism and the rise of capitalism, which was completely unbridled. Because the era before that, remember, was the Cold War. And you didn't really have a world which could trade freely. And you therefore had a very inflationary world. and dollar printing therefore gave you these bouts of bull markets in the then emerging market of Japan and Taiwan and so on.
Yeah.
The previous decade was gold and so on. So as these rules have to get overturned because the West has lived beyond their means, their only recourse to every problem that now occurs is let's print more money because we have the ability to do so. And 2008, in my view, marked the end of that period where they used that money printing press to great effect. And they realized the world didn't react. Like India was 40 rupees to the dollar. The yuan was, if I remember correct, it was probably 6 to the dollar. And post that, they printed 3x the dollars which were in existence.
Yeah.
And yet, oddly, the rupee has gone from 40 to almost 90. The yuan has almost stayed steady. And they use that excess money by keeping the currency stable to go and build hard assets and infrastructure and productive capacities. Whereas we went and did, Narega and, basically lost all the money and didn't build up our manufacturing infrastructure at the right time.
Yeah.
So as this game is now tilting and China has clearly taken control and leadership of the world, they produce probably half of all the world's manufacturing output. They control most of the supply chain for energy, which also we haven't solved this for decades. So as this kind of new world, which is Russia, China, Saudi, saying why are we playing by the rules set by the US and UK? This world has to change. So this chessboard is changing completely. How it lands and where it lands, we have to see, because if India had gone into bed with the BRICS, this would have become the new G7. But for strange reasons, I still can't understand why China did what it did in Ladakh. If that episode had not happened, BRICS would have already started emerging as the new power center of the world. We would probably have already seen the emergence of a new sort of multi-purpose currency bloc. I don't think people as yet will trust Russia and China to be the reserve currency in terms of store of value. But they've done with SIPs, which is the counter to the SWIFT trading system, where money transfers are now happening electronically. So SIPs is actually like the new UPI of the world in a way. Where SWIFT takes you 3 days to transfer your money, you can do it on SIPs in like pretty much a few seconds. So if a currency has both transacting power and a store of value, the transacting power is clearly moving away from the dollar. The store of value we are not finding, and therefore this whole move going to gold, going away to cryptocurrencies and so on is happening. But it's also a redesign of the whole geopolitical chessboard in terms of power play. And how India plays in this will determine really how our next 20 years go. Because even in the WTO post 2001, China got all the advantages as US embraced and brought them in. And we were still seen as close to the Soviets or the Russians at that point. So we were kind of kept out as pariahs. We never had a trade agreement with anyone of significance. So it's only now that you're seeing Europe has reached out, US has reached out. If you get a good trade deal going bilaterally with these economies, India being 3% of world market share, world economy is just terrible. Historically, India and China used to be a third of the world GDP. China is already well on its path there. India is at least 15, 20 years behind. But if we don't play this game right this time, the way we collapsed when we missed the Industrial Revolution, it's not a given that our rise is inevitable in the next 20 years. If we don't play both this geopolitical game right as well as this new emerging technological game right. So we'll see. I'm optimistic. I live life on that basis. But again, like I said, it's not a given. Let's see how it evolves.
Yeah, absolutely. What you're saying is so true because, we sometimes get trapped in our own echo chambers that India is great, the India opportunity as the show is called, etc. But it's so important to keep updated
Keep
with
a reality
all the,
check.
Yeah, absolutely.